First chapter in 7 steps to doing a pretty decent figure drawing. Now, basically, this is a thought process, and you're not necessarily going to physically do all the steps, but let's go through them physically for you. And our first chapter here is going to be the rough skeleton. All right, so the first thing you want to really go to is the core of the body, ribcage, pelvis. And so I'm going to do that first for you. So basically, I'm going to try to use some kind of X-ray vision and see if I can look through the skin for that rib cage. All right, so I'm gonna kind of guess that maybe it's like somewhere around here. It's tilted a little bit, and then what I'm gonna do is a little bit of continuous line, a little bit of figure drawing, and now I'm gonna look for a circle to represent my pelvis. Okay, so first I'm gonna do like a real primitive circle. And so I'm going to put it right about here. If we look at our photograph, I started with this like little line over here that this is her pelvis, and you can almost see a gradation in the photo how this would be the top of the circle. You can call it a bucket, you can call it a circle, but circle is the most primitive way to represent the pelvis. I mean, the next step that you could do is just give it like a front and a side. So this would come down to the front of the pelvis, side of one of the sides of the pelvis, and then this would just be like kind of the back of her butt. And so now we've kind of created a three-dimensional object over here. So front of the pelvis, side of the pelvis, this comes around to our navel, and then I'm just going to try to, ignore the breasts, ignore all the other stuff, and just look for some clues on the figure. So there's a rib over here on the photograph, and then there's a rib over there. So those are my clues to where that rib cage is. Now, I can see a little bit of a center line. I can see a little bit of the navel. Okay, so I'm going to think about my front center line, coming right on down to this is called the pubic bone on the front of the pelvis. All right, and then we're just going to kind of come on up, and now I can think about also my spine and how it's going to wrap around the back of the pelvis. Spine is going to go right to the center of the neck, back of the rib cage, I meant to say, into the back of the pelvis. All right, so that would be my first step for rough skeleton. So I've got this is a little bit more advanced than rough. Rough would just be an oval and a circle. So get the tilt of the rib cage, get the circle to represent a very primitive pelvis, get your front center line, and get your back center line, which is going to represent your spine. Okay, so now think about right about here, center of the pelvis. Not perfect, but we're just going to simplify. Center of the pelvis to roughly where the kneecap would be. Okay, and then so upper leg into the lower leg and get the angle of that foot. So really simplistic. Her upper leg's going to be a little bit longer than her lower leg. You just kind of guesstimate, the look and feel of the particular person that you're trying to design or the model that you're drawing. And now let's do the other leg on the other side of the pelvis. So right about here, again, use the cliche, your X-ray vision to look through the skin. And let's try to find where that kneecap is, patella. So this kneecap's a little bit lower than this one. This one's a little bit higher, so we're gonna bring that upper leg right to that kneecap, kind of. And then we're gonna get the angle of this. All right, so I'm exaggerating it slightly. It's not perfect. But let's just kind of put this kneecap right here. So upper leg, lower leg to the foot, angle of the foot, angle of the foot. So now let's go back up to the upper body. And our upper body is going to be upper arm, which is kind of almost level. And you can just very quickly pull a line straight down from the elbow. What's right below that? Almost this kneecap area. And yeah. So that helps with my measurement. So upper arm, lower arm. And so now we've got on the other side of that rib cage, upper arm to that elbow, lower arm into that hand. All right, so that is a real rough, primitive skeleton, okay? And now let's just do a little bit of the skull. So our skull would be represented with 2 ovals. So this first oval, basically forehead, jawbone, that's kind of hidden, And then our second oval is going to be the back of the skull, forehead. Okay, so let's not overdo it. Now, this initial line that I put here is awesome because it flows right into where these two ovals touch. So we've got an oval here, and we've got an oval here. So right where they touch basically is where your cervical vertebrae attached to the skull. So now this cervical vertebrae comes into your spine, thoracic vertebrae, into your lumbar vertebrae. So that's a great thing. And you can also use this vertebrae line, spine line, for a gesture as well. You know, you can use it for two things at once. Okay, so yeah, that's a rough skeleton. Now, again, I used to do this very lightly in class for my figure drawings, but I kind of don't do that anymore. Now, if you want, you know, you could use this primarily a little more so for memory drawings. And so a quick like little memory drawing right here for you would be, you know, I can do a little rib cage, pelvis, center line right into my navel, kind of advance that rib cage a little bit more, perhaps do two ovals to represent that skull, angle of the shoulders, angle of the hips, and now just, you know, one flowing line for that upper leg, one flowing line for that upper leg, lower leg, I meant to say, upper leg, lower leg, and then upper arm, lower arm. And so right away I've got like a quick little gesture of a person. So this is a good way to work out the pose. And maybe if you want to choose to do this in figure drawing class for a first step, spend 30 seconds on it. Okay? All right, so now let's move to the next step of how I think when I'm working on a figure drawing. And like I said, I would think about this way more than ever draw it. All right.